At one time, and actually not too long ago, I was just really focused on enterprise risk management for trying to optimize your results. And then when, some of you guys might remember, and it's only been a little over a year ago, but the SocGen issue where the guy was trading, and his managers actually probably knew he was trading, but he was winning, and so they just let him go. Well, all of a sudden he wasn't winning, and they go, oh, we got to stop this guy. You know, but it really highlighted the need to have controls, to have risk management that looks at exposures and tries to make sure that if somebody's dishonest, or just as important, somebody that's clueless. You guys have probably read the Orange County case study, where the guy had no clue that if interest rates went up, he had bet, you know, all the pension plans for all the public employees in Orange County, California. So with the clueless, you look at what could happen. You focus on the exposures. You really involve internal audit a lot. They're already in there doing a lot of those things. There's no reason to set up a separate process, but you want to leverage that to make it work. And there it's strictly a downside risk that you're trying to work with. Now, the more fun ERM is the honest version of enterprise risk management. There you're looking at exposures. How big is my risk? Am I comfortable with that? Do I need to put a hedge on to get down to a level where I'm comfortable, either through the financial markets or reinsurance or whatever? That's where you're doing what ifs. You're doing some scenario planning. We'll talk about that in a little bit. There you're involving the strategic planning department, the guys who are trying to say, we know where we are today. Tactical planning will help us get to tomorrow. But what do we want to be when we grow up? That's your strategic planning department. And how are you going to get there? Optimizing results. Not too long ago, I've been using the term optimization a lot, and I realized that it's important to strive for optimal results, but in reality, I don't think you can ever actually get there because you're always shooting at a moving target. But the ability of the attempt to try to optimize results is going to leave you in a much better position than you were in before you started. I'm going to let you read this definition. This was put together by the Actuarial Society and was adopted by the Society of Actuaries in 2003. The key to this, and what makes it different from other enterprise risk management definitions that are out there, is this word right here, exploit. Almost all risk management definitions that are out there talk about risk mitigation, about taking your risk and reducing it, which if you have an operational risk, fraud, things like that, you don't want to seek out more fraud. There's just certain risks that you don't optimize unless you take to zero, and then you have the cost-benefit analysis that goes along with that. But if you have financial risks, then there's a balance between taking different risks and that have different returns, finding niches, things that you do well. Maybe, if you're a hamburger maker, maybe you're McDonald's and you're trying to compete against Burger King, and you're more efficient at making the hamburger than Burger King is. So then you're able to charge a little bit less. And if you're able to charge a little bit less, then you'll get a little bit more business. That's what I mean by exploit. The other important things, one of them is to look at all sources, so all risks, not just looking at the silo risks that we talked about earlier. And then the third thing is to calculate the value to the stakeholders. And I'm not a proponent of if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I think in the United States there's a real good example right now that I have no idea how to measure it, but healthcare reform in the United States, I don't know how to measure it, but I have to manage that if I'm a health insurer right now. These risk categories, I used the NEIC codes, but I think they're the same in Canada. I'm not positive of that, but they tie back to the Basel Accords too that are being used with bank risk management. You have credit risk and equity risk. Basel also has interest rate risk and operational risk. The main financial risk that's missing there is the pricing risk, and so we include that as well. That's one that a bank, if they think about insurance, they're thinking about buying an insurance policy as opposed to writing an insurance policy. So that's why the Basel group wouldn't have included that. And then they also, Basel did not include strategic risk because their goal was to put together an economic capital requirements, and they couldn't figure out how to do it, and so they just left it off. There are other things. Reputational risk is one that it needs to be somewhere. Liquidity risk needs to be somewhere, and different people will put them in different places. But rather than having 50 different major categories of risks, I try to keep it to these. But the key is to think of these risk categories. These really aren't something new. These are the old risk silos that we've always dealt with.